Welcome, guys. It's great to have you today. Actually, it's kind of funny because every once in a while I have to do this by myself, and I get more nervous when I have to talk to you guys personally, as if I'm supposed to be like some knowledge base giving a bunch of information. But every once in a while, I come across these concepts and ideas, and I wouldn't know how to place it in any other format than kind of putting it here. And this Q5 idea, um, uh, interestingly came from ChatGPT, a conversation I was having with ChatGPT, and kind of asking the questions of end of year planning and what have you. And I think it was just a typo, to be honest, that put it in there. But this concept of there's actually, we often think of a year in 4 quarters, and we're very stuck to the calendar when we think of those quarters, right? And then we have these performance metrics, and you guys know I love the quarterly reports. I can compare one quarter to the other. There's all these really great things that it does. But in reality, in the fourth quarter, you have to do what you do in the other 3 quarters, and you also have to do something else. You have to plan next year as well. So the concept to me of the fifth quarter is this idea of for the next really 3 months, but maybe even 4 months moving into January is another body of work we have to do. And to wait till Q1 to do it is just way too late. And to do everything else besides Q4 routines and Q4 kind of stuff, then I like this idea that it's an extra layer on top of it. So that's the concept, the big idea of Q5. Um, but Jason and I, what we do the beginning of every fourth quarter is we start thinking about tax planning, and it makes us kind of work with our clients piece by piece and start asking questions about where we're going, where the money's going to go by the end of the year. There's some strategic spending that we kind of all kind of put on our docket to maybe do by the end of this year. Or if you're on an accrual basis, which is what we highly recommend as being on accrual, this is where you start reconciling projects to know what's being carried over to the next year or what's being kept in this year revenue wise. So there's just some planning that you have to do now that you can't wait till mid-December to do, right in the highlight of Christmas, trying to figure out your taxes. It's not, there's no need to, it's not worth it. You know, most information for the rest of the year. It's only 10 weeks. You can look 10 weeks ahead in most situations and kind of understand and plan stuff. So one of the big things that we like to do with our clients with Think is just think ahead that way. But the other thing we layer on top of it is thinking about what it means to be reconcile what you are today and what needs to change for tomorrow. So instead of thinking of 2026 as a copycat, taking everything you did successfully this year and repeat it next year, we know that next year is never going to be the same as this year. We have to think ahead. So I wanted to add a perspective to that one piece of it today. So I'm calling that the Q5. I'm curious, anybody, I think there's half a dozen of us, 10 of us here, 8 of us right now on the conversation. Anybody here do have any end of year routines that you really like and has been beneficial for you or your business or looking ahead in perspective? Seth, you're shaking your head, so you're gonna have to speak up.
Yeah, man, I'm all about goal setting and I mean I do it all year round, but actually something quite tactile that my wife got me started on was we're so quick to move on from small wins to the next thing. Is she got me in the habit of anytime I felt like a big or small win, writing it down on a little piece of paper and then throwing it into a jar. And then at the end of the year, just going through the jar and reading to each other like just the different wins. And it's just really motivating because you forget all the small wins. And by the end of the year, you're counting up all the losses more than the wins. It's just a really nice way to shift perspective.
I love that because the losses hurt more than the wins gain, don't they? They last longer than the gains do. So to give yourself a reminder of what success looks like, it is kind of some wind in your sail when you do it that way. Yeah, I really love that. Alex, I see that you're saying you're actually here for some inspiration for end of year stuff. So we're going to let you off the hook. Anybody else have just something that they'd like to do end of year? We'll call it like next year's planning. Anything that gives you motivation or insight of to what the next year would be based off of things and experiences you're having this year. Yeah, we got Lewis.
I do set up some of my, I mean, such as they are, I do set up some of my docs that I use throughout the year for the next year. I like I was just talking about my calendar and stuff. I order a new daily calendar. Like I have a page per day. I have like this biz dev chronology that I do. I set up that. I set up myself everything so that January 1 I'm ready to go. I don't wait. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I set up everything so that it flows in. And then I've been with the last year or so of AI, taking my last year's document and having AI crunch it down and, for instance, create a spreadsheet of all the names that I've put in my cron I call it a cron,
Yeah.
from this job I had years ago where they called everything that was in order of chronology a cron. I have my biz dev cron or any of the other crons that I use. I had it pull out all the names and make a spreadsheet. I had it go
Oh,
through
wow.
and compress everything, for a conversation that then the AI could have another conversation about in a different chat so that it becomes part of the project knowledge. I try to tee up the year.
I love it. It feels good, like putting fresh bread beds on fresh sheets on a bed, right? Like you kind of like when
Yeah.
you get that new diary and you break it in, where you clear out all the old data and give yourself a brand new sheet that you can start filling things in. Some people get
Yeah.
stressed like to delete everything, but like no, delete it, move on, start building a fresh new look, especially if you know there's a pivot in our need. It's good to do that stuff. So I love those. I
Yeah.
like the idea of just using the AI too to kind of give you a feedback loop as well. Sometimes as business owners, we don't put ourselves in situations where we have a feedback. So to give ourselves that opportunity to get another point of view, I don't know if that's appropriate to say for AI, but another way of looking at your data would be
Yeah,
really
I'm
great.
definitely using it for that. I'm definitely using AI to sort of beat the hell out of my thinking and my even my tax returns, like to, sort of beat up my accountants on how they've done and stuff like that, and beat up me on my, sort of suppositions about how I think things are going.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking differently. That's the key element that we want to be able to do. We don't want to miss the opportunities that are in front of us, or many of us started our businesses for a goal, and we don't want to miss or hold back on steps towards that goal. Just being a victim to whatever someone else is giving you, you're going to have to send yourself or push yourself in the right direction to accomplish those goals. No one's going to give you those opportunities. You're going to have to go find them yourself. And so that directional kind of opportunity is exactly what we're talking about when it comes to this Q5 thought. Okay, I'm going to share my screen a little bit today because I have some bullet point ideas I'd like to share with you when it comes to this Q5 concept. Um, Specifically, I just again like just to reiterate what the concept is here. It's Q5 is really just the idea of strategically and transitionally looking at a quarter that exists outside of the fiscal year, so that we're not following the pattern because it's there, but kind of pulling ourselves out and asking the bigger question: what does a late 2025, early 2026, regardless of the calendar dates, need to look like in order to achieve the goals I want to moving ahead in the business? And it's also a chance to kind of look forward and not just look back at things. So here's some quick ideas. The Q5 concept, it's not about output, it's about outlook. So often we stick with our quarterly reports and quarterly routines. So we get our stuff together for our CPA, our bookkeepers. We're measuring and timing total revenue or number of projects, or there's certain types of projects. And this is not necessarily just grabbing that data and putting it into the chronology so that we can compare it, but this is adding it all together to ask the question, what is going to come and how does that change my perspective moving forward for the next year? So that's the first idea. This is always a good one to remember as a business owner, but it's when the owner stops working in the business and starts working on it, right? We're pulled into these day-to-day conversations. We always have something to deliver. But every once in a while, it's good to take a retreat and kind of think about what you really want to do and what is happening. Either, and keep in mind, you have your business, we know that. We have your career, which is a little bit bigger than your business. And then you have your life, which is much greater than even the combination of those two. And we have to be able to look at this from life, career, and then in business and ask the question, is the business helping me achieve my career goals? And is my career helping me achieve my life goals? So that point of view of working on instead of in is going to be really great. And the other concept is just like an athlete. You want to use the off season to train smarter. Owners also need to take a strategic off season to kind of think of things specifically. So we're really just saying right now, this idea of a Q5 concept is to be what's the word I'm looking for? To be intentional on the work that we're doing so that the company, your career, and your life are heading in the right direction. So that's the big picture Q5 concept. If I said this was Q4, you guys would mistake it as for tax preparation and that kind of stuff too. And we're trying to go beyond that stuff. Okay. So I also want to be clear that I'm not talking about giving up things. So the routines that you always need to do, right? So never stop doing these. Even when things slow down, you don't stop doing this stuff, which is one, prospecting conversations. It's really interesting sales to work with so many clients on sales, to do our small groups and how many of those small groups deal with sales, how often sales shows up on this weekly briefing. And funny enough, when I talk about sales, how many more people will show up to the weekly briefing than not? I feel like people want to solve the sales problem like once and for all. And they're always kind of looking at the sales as a problem that they can be solved. And I kind of want to paint the picture more now than ever of like, it is not a problem to solve. It's actually, it's more of a preparation for a harvest. Like it's actually exciting, it's bountiful, and it's wonderful, but it takes some hard work and some diligence to make that happen. So no matter what, we always need to be prospecting. We always have to be thinking forward of where that work is going to come from. And we want to guide ourselves towards that work, the kind of work we want to do. Whenever you have a dream at night that sticks with you of a kind of project you want to do, you have to wake up in the morning and start finding prospects that will give you money so you can achieve that goal. So we want to be working towards that more and more. I think my AirPod just bummed out on me. So just in case, I'm going to switch over to this one. Okay, so the next one is reviewing cash flow and your pipeline. None of you guys are a stranger to me to know that I think about cash flow all the time. This is the thing I do. So one of the reasons why I like cash flow so much is that the cash flow gives us opportunity to look forward and balance the decisions we're making with the revenue or money we have. So that idea of needs plus resources equal a solution, cash flow gives us opportunity for what those resources are and how we can manage those resources. The next thing is holding producer reviews, and this could be producer, creative, whatever. But when we're talking about producer reviews here, we're talking about looking at how your decision making flows down into your projects. If you're using a production roll-up, it's a great way to be doing those project reviews or reviewing the decisions your producers are making. We like those on a weekly routine, just like cash flows on a weekly routine, have weekly project meetings, working with your producers. Always checking your margins. So that's looking at your finances at least quarterly, looking at your finances and making sure that you're hitting the profit margins and utilization goals that you have. And also receivables. It's everybody there's some sort of like holdback that we're afraid of asking for the money that we've earned. I'm sure many of you have gotten over this thing, but you all know there are moments where like, gosh, can't they just pay us? Do I have to follow up again? And we really, really hate that. I want you guys to know that that's just part of the reality, and you have to keep up with those receivables. All these are like diet and exercise routines. You can't actually skip them and still stay healthy as a studio. You're always going to have to keep those going forward. Okay, before I go on, I just want to make sure, you guys can hear me, right? I'm not really sure. Okay, cool. Well, one of you guys stop me if you can no longer hear me. So, because these things are acting up under in my ear. Okay, so the goal now with Q5 is measure beyond revenue. So what I think that we often think of quarterly reviews is we think of things in revenue forms. How are we doing, compared to last year revenue wise? How are we doing compared to last Q3, Q4 revenue wise? What's the price and that we're giving our clients that's changing? They're asking us more for less money. All that's very, very important. But I want you guys to take a moment to just kind of think of things even on a broader scale. And we at RevThink love these kind of bigger topics that measure just beyond like total revenue. The first one is profitability by client. And the outcome from that isn't just, your winners, but we want you to know or have a discussion about who are your best and your worst clients. Profitability, not revenue, but profitability of our client is one of the indicators that the client respects you, they understand the work that you're doing, and they're measurably giving you dollar value greater than the other clients if you're hitting higher profits than others. So profitability by client is really, really great. If you don't have a system set up for that, we have a production roll up. Jason's here on this call. I'm available. We have, 35 to 45 videos we've made already about the roll up. You can find those in
Is that all?
The community, probably more, probably 10 times that. But we give those roll ups away so you guys can have these reports and look at this stuff. But that's one of the key indicators. Here's another one: profitability by producer. This is asking the internal question: what work drives a return or drains the people that you're working for? So you might find that different team members. So you can even look at this profitability by creative director or creative producer if you have something like that at your company. But whoever is making those decisions, what kind of decision they're making, and what do they often give up for the benefit of profit? One of the things that we always see as an indicator is that it's easier to give up profit than to take on certain challenges. Challenge of meeting a schedule, challenge of facing a client who has been changing the project over and over again, challenges from your team who aren't performing as they need to. You can often see this float up to the profitability. So if you look at your internal profitability and you look at your team members in relation to that, you might see where some people are kind of pushing the envelope more or give things up more. And that's that drain, the drive and drain kind of mechanism that people are indicating to you by just reading the tea leaves. These are really good moments so you can ask different questions or putting pressure on somebody of just about profit. You might want to open the door as a listener and find out more of what's driving somebody or draining them when it comes to those projects. Okay. The next one, I think it takes a little bit more dialogue or more kind of intentional, but like look at your team and your team balances. Who is thriving and who is burning out? Is your production team in total burning out? Is the team that's working in visual effects burned out differently than the team that's working in promos? Are your creative directors working extra hours to make up for what your animators aren't able to accomplish? These are all kind of great analysis to kind of look at what type of investments you might want to look at, looking at 2020, looking at the months ahead to realize what the team structure needs to be and what new resources are available or need to be replaced in the company so that you can meet the needs that the clients are asking you to get to. Okay, this last one too is just like looking yourself in the mirror. What's giving or taking energy from you as well? This might be somebody you might want to ask your wife about. This could be somebody, if you have a business partner, you guys each take turns, go out to have drinks, take turns, ask these questions. I think you and Ricardo, if I remember right, you guys have a routine like that, right? Where you guys go and have an honest conversation with each other once a month or something like that, I want to say.
Yeah, we have what we call like a walk and talk. And we just pick like a, weekend and do it really early so it doesn't interfere with family time. And, 7 a.m. just meet at the park, walk around, talk biz, you know?
Yeah. So in that one, that might be a great opportunity to get some feedback from somebody or be able to express to somebody, hey, what's giving you energy or taking it from you? Or Lewis, as you and I were talking about, like we carry these notebooks, maybe this is a good chance to journal some of that stuff and be honest. That we don't have to share with somebody, but you can ask yourself the honest questions. Um, when you're looking around, be careful and be intentional about what you're jealous of others. Sometimes that jealousy can create discontent and draining energy from you. Sometimes that jealousy makes you wonder about what the choices you're making, that you should make different choices and step up into the game and start achieving those kind of goals. But that's a really interesting indicator that we often try to avoid or squash. But you can ask yourself that question if you're journaling or working with somebody that's close to you and you know what that stuff is. But owner energy, by the way, is your number one investment you're making as a business. So as we're looking forward and asking ourselves the question of what comes next, how much we have available to give, and who we're giving that to me, this is the one that I want to know the most is like, where is this company going to go? Is based off of the energy and purpose I have to put it out there. And I want to be able to put that out there as much as possible. I can't give up my energy to something that doesn't give me that kind of return. Um, okay, so those are the items I kind of wanted to share to get us started about Q5 routines. But now I'm curious for you guys of what you would specifically want if you had, if you could take a sabbatical for 6 weeks and think about what where the company's going to go or the type of investments you want to make into the company. Does anybody have like an insight of a discovery they would have? Like if I didn't have to just do the day-to-day work, what kind of focus would you want to have in that 5 week, 6 week vacation slash sabbatical? And what kind of insights would you look for, or do you think that you'd be surprised that you found? Anyone can chime in here. Because you can just unmute yourself if you want to chime in.
I can throw something in, Tim. I feel
Sure.
like I mean what you just said resonates a lot with with me and how Ricardo and I have been doing this. And I think like taking the time to plan is really great. And like in a way sticking to the plan is another thing that we try harder to do this year. And in a way it's we'll see if it's going to pay off, right? Like if we decide to invest a lot more in marketing, for example. But when you invest in marketing, you don't see the return until way later. But having that commitment and commit like hardcore cash to do it and follow through. To me, it's just kind of like, especially if you're in a partnership, um, it's one of those things and you kind of struggle, but at the same time, you have the opportunity to support each other. One person could have like cold feet and, like, oh my gosh, I think we're spending a lot of money here. I don't know why Mike giving me a thumbs up, but like, is it worth doing or not? And then I think the
Yeah.
other person say, well, let's just stick it out, or and I feel like um as like studio owners, sometimes you kind of have to step back and try to look forward 6 months, a year in advance and use that time to figure out like, where is the studio is going to go? Not 2 months from now would work, but a year from now. And that's super hard to do because then, there's so many variables out there.
Yeah, it is interesting how often we do compromise, isn't it? Like we say, let's just stick it out, or a client might give us, a pile of lemons to work with, and we say it's okay for now. This is an investment, or things that we haven't really double checked on after, sometimes to a year or 2 years, or like we keep on doing this this one routine with this client and we know it's not benefiting us. It's not giving us the return that we want to. Maybe
Yeah.
this is
And
the
and
year
also
we start changing that habit.
Yeah, and also like the other thing too is like, are you adaptive enough? Do you see the trends happening with certain clients? We saw this a couple times with our clients. Like suddenly they just stopped spending on certain things that they ask us to do all the time. And if you just like if you don't stop, analyze the book and look at those past projects and see where the revenue is going instead, then you're not gonna be able to adapt quickly. I think like by the end of this first quarter, we kind of changed our narrative with certain clients because we saw that their dollars were no longer going towards something that we did for them for 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
So we kind of changed the narrative, adapted, and were able to capture that new revenue with this client,
When
quickly.
you say change your narrative, you mean you approached them and started talking differently, not waited for them to act first, and you, while you have their attention, pitched them or expanded your capabilities with them, right?
Yeah, like basically we pitched to them capabilities that were not full capabilities in the past. Yeah, like an
Yeah.
example would be like we were known for like doing character animation with this client for a long time, and that's all they knew us for. But here and there, they because you work direct to client, they come to you and they just ask you to edit stuff for them. So the editorial is something we did in between. And then all of a sudden then we said like, you know what? They're not spending here. And then we just tell them, hey, we do a lot of editorial stuff. So they kind of start to give us the work that we were not pursuing 2 years ago, but we're pursuing now because the dollar that they spend is also changing.
I I I am gonna update this last slide just based off what you just said on because I really love this one and I didn't even think of this when I wrote this out here. But I added this last one that says client energy. What's the hints that your clients are sending to you? That's
Yeah.
another really great thing to look at and just to take note of. Why ignore it? I I have the habit of putting my head in the sand sometimes of like not wanting something to change. So you're like, gosh, does it have to change? And you hold back. But this is the moment, this Q5 moment is when you say, no, wait a second, this is the time of year where why not think differently? Why not ask what's possible? And then I love the idea that it even kind of pivoted and made your relationship stronger with the client instead of slowly weakening that thing until they just fades off and becomes nothing. That's great. Thanks, Hong. That's a really good one. Anyone else have a thought of like if you were to look ahead at Q5, if you could take that break, what might come out of it, or what surprise you might find if you whatever, or maybe even just an initial thought of what's one of the things that you would journal if you were doing this exercise. Alex, even you can answer this one, even though you came here just to listen. No, you go ahead, Lewis.
I think I mean, just again, looking at the measure beyond revenue slide, I mean, I think um I would spend a little time thinking about mapping the best worst client with the drain resources situation and see if that's one to one, you know what I mean? Like if it's obvious. Um, because I don't think it's always obvious. Do you know what I mean? Like where
Yeah,
it's always aligned. I don't,
it's not right. Yeah,
it's not always, but I think it'd be interesting to like map that a little bit. For us anyway. Like we have some clients that have gotten into a really low budget situation, but we've been able to keep them as high margin clients because we know how to service them. Um, and we have some clients with decent budgets that are more annoying that you know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
it where there's like I don't know if anybody's gone through this, but and again, this is a safe place, so I'm just gonna say this like we've had a lot of clients ask us to work with them on Slack, and it's just been really hard. Like I don't have to go through it nearly as much as my producers do. and my editors. It doesn't affect me as much as it affects them, but it's definitely a drain. I mean,
Yeah.
and um,
Yeah, it's not
it's
necessarily like a
striking.
square peg and a round hole problem, but sometimes it's like an oval and a round hole problem, right? It looks like it could possibly fit, and then sometimes it just doesn't match, and we keep compromising.
Well, it's
And
just a huge ask when the budget's going down to sort of say we have to be in touch with you hourly as opposed to when the production schedule says we're going to be in touch with you. I mean, it's just
yeah,
it's kind of insane, you know what I mean? The notion that you're going to be in like the budgets are going down, but the communication has to be going way, way, way up, and so essentially three of your measure beyond revenue things, profitability by client, profitability by producer, team balance, all come into play in that, Slack thing. And it's not just Slack, it's Teams, it's Airtable, it's Frame, I mean, it's like
oh,
how many technologies? I mean, we have all the technologies, obviously, because the clients are asking us to, but
yeah,
it's a heavy lift.
yeah, and it takes the control out of our hands a little bit, doesn't it? It makes us more accessible and more just like at their beckoning call, commoditizes us and makes it
Yeah,
all about like, what did they want? Well, I'll just give you whatever you want. I don't have any opinion or any point of view, and really, we're supposed to have that point of view and be able to slow the thing down or focus on what's most important.
yeah, I mean, a lot of the Blair Ends, David Baker stuff makes me think that I'm doing the wrong thing by having that. At the same time, I think I'm servicing them really well. You know what I mean? So, like, it's a rub in the system. I also have used it to up the budgets on things by talking about the cadence changing and talking about the conversation changing, and it's worked.
Oh,
So I
good.
don't, I don't, I don't
Yeah.
know.
But it sounds to me like not only you're identifying something you would process, but you've also like realized, caught onto a pattern, and even started having conversations with your clients and capture that. So
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's a perfect kind of Q5 kind of thinking right there. Finding those opportunities or those needs, understanding them, and then asking yourself the question, what should I do about it? It's the ignoring it part of it that we don't want to do. And there is a refresh that happens kind of at the end of the year that people will be more open to a different kind of conversation and ask questions, allow you to ask questions differently about them. They'll even be available to you as you're having these conversations, especially if it means that it will make your relationship with them stronger. And if we are kind of leaning into something, coordinating something with them, collaborating with them on some of these concepts and ideas, then that feedback loop adds value to you, and that connection is stronger. You can rest on that connection to build out that new capability or stretch what you're currently doing for them into new areas. Those are really great. Well, that's my Q5 concept. I want you guys to be thinking just beyond the calendar year as we kind of wrap up the year. I don't want you to just be thinking about December 31st and hitting those revenue goals and those project numbers and what have you, those profit numbers, which are still very important, but to be able to think of like, what does this spectrum of decisions I have to make that would bleed over to 2026, or more important, set up 2026 to be the year I want it to be. Who do I need to be for my client? Who do I need to be for my employees? What do the employees and my clients need to be for me in order for me to achieve my goals? And just taking that time and reflecting on it. Here's what I know about our industry. We get some really great weeks ahead of a lot of work. We're going to get very busy. We're going to be pushing some end of year schedules. Clients are going to be putting a lot of pressure on us. So it almost feels like the crunch time where we want to get this thing done is when we're going to be working in our business more than working on our business. So that's why I wanted to put a reminder out there before even Halloween to say, hey, it's not too early to start asking this question about 2026. You're going to be calling your CPA about end of your tax planning anyway. So, and that means your 2026 cash flows can be affected. But also kind of just thinking forward of like what 2026 is really going to bring, what these technology shifts are going to be, and then what's that going to mean for our business. I know, just so you guys know, over the next few weeks, we're gonna do a quarterly review. I think it's a week, the 2 weeks from today. We're going to do a quarterly review of finances. We're just getting the reports together this week, so I need one more week to get it done. So in 2 weeks, we'll kind of look at the big numbers. But I'm going to be asking bigger questions of what I'm calling in my small group timelines and transitions, our turntables and turning points and timelines. Sorry. And what the question is like the industry changing, a shift happening right now, looking backwards at patterns to see what the opportunities have been in the past. So as the shift happens now, what the opportunities will be in the near future. Because I don't want to be missing out on those opportunities. I've seen them once, twice in my lifetime, maybe. And history has given us a point of view that we can look at. And in my small group, we're actually doing that. We're literally drawing colored timelines, looking at certain patterns, asking the question, what ifs and how does it add up? And then kind of looking at the moment we are to see what opportunities and needs are there and seeing if we can't be some of those or at least recognize them as they happen and take advantage of ourselves. So that got me really thinking of like, well, that's a little bit more macro. If I could pull it back just a little bit, what does it really just mean for the end of the year? So the Q5 concept has kind of come out of that. If you are interested in being part of my small group, by the way, it's Thursday mornings, 9 o'clock Pacific. So it's noon Eastern. And we are going to, we're reading the book, The Turning Point. Am I right? Yeah. Turning Point.
No,
what's
the
the
fourth
book?
turning.
Fourth Turning. Geez, sorry. I have too many turnings in my head today. The Fourth Turning. We're kind of cramming that into an audiobook and just listening to it. If you haven't read The Fourth Turning yet, it is really fascinating book, especially when you found out it was written in the 1990s. And it's talking about many of the patterns we're seeing right now. Jason, hold that up to the camera so Lewis can see it. It's called The Fourth Turning. Who's the author on that, Jay?
William Strauss, Neil Howe.
Yeah. So if you want to be part of that conversation, it's fun. We are kind of doing some art projects when it comes to the timetables, the timelines part of it. But if you're also kind of like a pattern matcher person like I am, and you kind of like to geek out and ask the bigger questions of how does one economic trend affect another social trend, and how would that affect the economy of our industry? That's the conversations we're having. That's it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Liz. Thanks for being part of the conversation and hanging there with me and contributing. I appreciate you guys.
Appreciate
if you have anything more, by the way,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. If you have any more, drop it into the community. Take hold of this and encourage others. There's 800 people now in our community, or 779. So we are about 21 people short of 800 people. So there's a large audience for you and conversations that I'm sure they would love to have with you. So be part of that group as well. Great to have you in there. And I guess until next week, you guys have a kind of a wonderful week, and we'll see you at next week's weekly briefing.
Awesome.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.